And Lucky Saint, the name, how did you land on Lucky Saint and where does that come from? And was there a name that it was going to be that didn't get through to the final round?
They presented 4 routes for the brand, and the first one was called Saint. There was immediately something interesting in the word Saint for a couple of reasons. One, there's just this we can all feel a little bit saintly if we're not drinking. There was this kind of like quite nice nod to it, but then also there's lots of religious heritage in brewing.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to a special sponsor, Sam Lawrence Recruitment. We all know that finding the right people or the right job can feel really overwhelming, and that's exactly where Sam comes in. He really just gets it. It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about connecting the right people with the right opportunities. He takes the time to understand you and exactly what you're looking for, whether you're building a team or taking that next career leap. So definitely get in touch. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. At Getting to Grow, I believe that growth starts with connection. And that's where our sponsor, We Are All Marketing, comes in. I'm super excited to be partnering with Vic and the team over at We Are All Marketing. They're not just a marketing agency, they're storytellers, strategists, and your biggest advocates. Whether you're building a brand, launching a product, or strengthening your digital presence, We Are All Marketing helps you turn ideas into impact. With a personalised, results-driven approach, they ensure your vision reaches the right audience in the right way. Ready to grow your business? Visit weareallmarketing.com and see how they can help you thrive. Getting to Grow is also brought to you by the Coconut Collab. And full disclosure, as I'm sure most of you are aware, I work there, so I know how much love goes into everything that we make. We're all about creating delicious, dairy-free, plant-based treats that do not compromise on taste. From our creamy yogurts to our indulgent desserts, everything's made with coconuts and a whole lot of care. If you're looking for something naturally good but seriously tasty, and my favourite is just our natural coconut yogurt, I have it most mornings with granola and lots of honey. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for spending your Tuesday evening here with me. Luke and I were just saying it's funny actually, that light is really bright. I can't really see any of you. So if you do have your hand up later for a question, because there will be a Q&A a bit later on, I'll have to be looking. But yes, thank you so much for spending your Tuesday evening here with me at the Ned. My name is Zoe Fox and I am the host and founder of the Getting to Grow podcast, where I sit down with founders behind some of the most exciting food and beverage brands. I've had the amazing opportunity of speaking to so many founders, so please do give it a listen if you get the chance. I also get to host conversations like this live in person, going beyond the headlines, really getting to know the person behind the brand. And Luke, so tonight we have someone here who's defined what it means to launch a beer brand in the modern world. Luke is the founder of Lucky Saint, the alcohol-free beer that's not only full of flavour but full of purpose. Before starting the brand, Luke worked across so many different varieties of kind of avenues, which we're going to get into before as well. But it was his frustration with the lack of non-alcoholic options that sent him on a mission. That mission took 2 years, 6 breweries, 3 countries, and 1 big leap of faith. He launched Lucky Saint in 2018, and since then it's grown to the UK's #1 alcohol-free beer. It's stocked in over 10,000 venues, served in some of the best restaurants in the country, and of course here tonight at the Net. And it's the first ever alcohol-free brand to open its own pub in the heart of Marylebone. He's built a B Corp, shaping the narrative around modern and mindful drinking, and is proof that you can disrupt an entire category by sticking to your principles and obsessing over the product. So please do give a big round of applause for Luke Boase.
Thanks, Zoe.
So that's the only thing I have to read off my iPad, and now you have like my full attention. I find it there's so much to say about you, so I just can't learn that off by heart. But now I'm here. So, Luke, what were you doing before you started Lucky Saint?
My last job was in the sort of most unlikely place. So I ended up in an oil and gas company working on projects in Kazakhstan. Okay. which was not the intended route at all. I was working for a Belgian entrepreneur looking at projects for him, and he happened to own this oil and gas business in Kazakhstan. Wow. And one fateful day he said, Luke, he's like, could you do me a favor? Could you just do this like one thing, look at this one project in Kazakhstan? And then 2 years later, I was stuck in the trap. But the nature of those projects is they spin up and they're very intense, and then they spin down. And so when in the low points, I was spending all of my time figuring out what I really wanted to be, doing in my life. And at one of those moments, I met two founders of a technology startup business, and despite, I guess, having worked kind of in all sorts of things, I'd never been exposed to the world of startups. And I remember sitting in a meeting with them, and they were explaining how they wanted to change the face of retail, and their enthusiasm and belief and passion for what they were building was infectious. And so I walked out of that meeting being like, I need to be on that side of the table doing something that I'm that excited about and that passionate about. And yeah, a few ideas came and went, but the one I could never shake off was this idea of taking the sort of dustiest, most maligned category and trying to turn it into something positive.
So were you a big drinker before to kind of make you think, I want alcohol free?
I think I'd probably be like a regular drinker in terms of, look, I went to university in Newcastle, which probably says enough. So I'd have myself down as a regular, I guess, like, a regular drinker, not a consumer of alcohol-free beer. I guess reasonably like healthy in my lifestyle. Funny enough, I'd sort of, without consciously knowing it, I'd sort of stopped drinking beer probably in the like late noughties. I can now figure out why that was, but at the time it just didn't sort of float my boat anymore. Anyway, and then craft beer came along in, 2012, 2013, and suddenly that was what the problem had been. It was like an absence of interesting things to drink in the beer space. And then I was thinking one day around, like, alcohol-free beer on paper, great proposition. In practice, I wasn't even a consumer of it. So that was the little spark that sort of went off in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it.
And you spent 2 years and worked across 6 breweries, kind of perfecting the recipe. In that trial and error period at the beginning, how did you kind of end up perfecting the recipe and all the challenges you had? How did you kind of work around those issues?
I mean, like too many challenges to name. So the first, I guess, before we sort of even got to the like development of a product, they were kind of had this idea of building an alcohol-free beer brand and trying to turn the category into something positive. And I thought that needed 2 things. One, there wasn't a beer that was good enough to bring me in. And then secondly, there wasn't a brand that would make me feel positive about that choice. The latter part is a bit of a moot point if you don't have a great product. So I just launched into reaching out to breweries and trying to figure out any way. I honestly had like no experience in any of the things that we now do. So beer, marketing, brand, I had no experience in anything. I remember sitting at work and Googling ingredients in beer, which tells you it was a low base to start from. So it was always going to be a case of kind of reaching out and trying to find brewers who could help. So I'd just do tons of outreach to any brewer, anyone in drinks who'd basically spare any time, and then try and convince the owner or someone senior within a brewery to say, look, I've got this idea, can you help, would you like to help develop it? And with the sort of expectation that there'd be a kind of a relationship, an ongoing relationship to produce the beer afterwards.
And in those early days where you're kind of cold calling, walking into lots of breweries, trying to get people's opinions, were any of the ones that you worked with in the early days that maybe said no but have ended up becoming quite vital partners in Lucky Saint's journey?
I mean, I still know lots of them, funnily enough. Like, there was one brewery where I think when I approached them, I think the owner looked at it and thought, maybe that's quite a good idea. So I'll just play along with it, and if it's any good, then we'll just do it ourselves. But it wasn't. I remember we did 2 brews there. The first one tasted awful. The second one got infected, and then the owner called me and just said, "Look, my head brewer is really motivated and really interested in brewing like 8% IPAs. He's really not motivated or interested in this project, and I need him happy."
Have you heard from any of them since obviously you've become the brand you are today that have emailed
well,
in?
he's a friend now, and so and then another brewery I approached, and we did a bit of we had an attempt with. They own some pubs, so we now work with those pubs. So yeah, it's a small it's a small industry, and if there's one thing I've learned is that everything comes around again in some way, often in a different form, but whether that's a customer that you work with or a supplier, nothing ever happens once. You always end up talking to someone again on something else. So it's important to build good relationships through that process.
Absolutely. And Lucky Saint, the name, how did you land on Lucky Saint, and where does that come from? And was there a name that it was going to be that didn't get through to the final round?
It was it was for a time called Not Another Beer Co, which is still our there's a bit of legacy, so it's still officially our kind of company name. But Lucky Saint itself was, so we started doing some work with an amazing agency called Other Way I guess like brand creation beginning to end, and they presented 4 routes for the brand, and the first one was called Saint, and it immediately there was immediately something interesting in the word Saint for a couple of reasons. One, there's just this little kind of we can all feel a little bit saintly if we're not drinking. There was this kind of like quite nice nod to it, but then also there's lots of religious heritage in brewing, so it feels like a kind of brand name that's been around for longer than it has, because of those sort of that religious heritage that's there. But we couldn't get the trademark on it, so it was all a bit of a moot point. And then we spent 2 months trying to find another name, and so much naming has such a big influence on the brand and the brand story and your tone of voice. And we did it like literally we went through it all. I became an expert on like horology and watchmaking, because I thought maybe alcohol-free beer was all about time and the time it'll give you back. So we like dived into that and sort of didn't find any nice names there, and like Hourglass was already gone, and then got quite into Romany names. So Romany names that have some really interesting meanings to them. So got really interested in Django because it means I awake. But equally felt like Django wasn't going to be a great name for a beer brand. And then out of nowhere, we were playing around, fun enough, with adjectives with some of these names, and then out of nowhere, Jono, who runs Other Way, I remember exactly where I was standing on a hot day in May outside Westfield Shopping Centre. And we were talking through it, and I was in despair basically, because we actually couldn't do anything. Everything had ground to a halt until we had a name. All the sort of design stuff, the direction was all done, and out of nowhere he just said, "What about Lucky Saint?" And it was like, done. It was just knew it. And the lucky part of the name, one of the reasons it sort of immediately made sense to me was because there's a podcast series that you will know called How I Built This. Yeah. And the last question so How I Built This is interviews with founders of some of the most amazing brands and businesses. And the last question that the interviewer, Guy Raz, always asks is, how much of your success do you put down to skill and judgment, and how much do you put down to luck? And the answer is always sort of very similar. It's lots of serendipitous meetings and lucky breaks and fortuitous moments. And so the kind of the lucky part for me is an ode to the luck that I think you need to make these things work.
definitely. I mean, the founders I've spoken to on the podcast, a lot of them say it's sometimes like right time, right place. I was very lucky in that situation. But yeah, I mean, you can't knock obviously all the immense hard work that goes into what you've done. You launched, like you say, into market in October 2018, and the on-trade rollout was swift. So was your approach to sell more into bars and restaurants first than it was to maybe go get a 4-pack in retail?
Yes. So I'd read somewhere drinks brands are built in the on-trade, so like that became the gospel. And we launched on the 1st of October, and I remember, so we had 33 venues stocking our beer on kind of launch day, and the only thing, it was me and Jordan, who was a grad who had just hired in the September, and the only thing we did was prospecting, just like all day, every day. And I remember this feeling, it's sort of amazing in those early days, because if you go from like 1 venue to 2 venues, you've just doubled the size of your business, and you go 2 venues to 4 venues, you doubled again, and it's so instantaneous and so rewarding. And literally, like, the more emails you send today will mean more replies tomorrow and more listings the day after that, rather than waiting for a day. So it's this it's very incredibly rewarding kind of cycle. And we won 80 new venues in our first month. We won 19 new venues in our second month. We won 100 in our third month. And it was like, go.
And with the kind of production scale from doubling the size of your business from going 2 to 4, how was that process, and where were you at this point, brewing it?
Yeah, I mean, it still took like 3 months to sell through half a truck of beer. And yeah, I was remembering, so that the first order was like half a truck, and then you just make a sort of rough, it's because it takes 6 weeks to brew our beer, and so you probably need to allow for 8 weeks in order to so you then make a bit of a calculation. I wonder, maybe we're ready to order another. Maybe we could do a whole truck now. So it was 3 months until we sort of ordered a bit more beer, and then it would be, because that was a whole truck, then that would be another 3 months before you go again. And now I actually couldn't tell you what, but I remember a year ago we looked, I think it was November, and we were doing a truck a day.
Wow.
So yeah, these things have moved on.
But also in the early days, it's really hard to forecast, because you obviously got a shelf life on your product, and you need to make sure that when you're ordering your stock, that that you sell within its shelf life, but also then give the end customer enough time for them to sell it through. So there's so many things in the initial early stages that you're also learning and figuring out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of everything is figuring it out, and everything just sort of needs to be kind of, from an operational perspective, just needs to be good enough at that stage. I think you're just trying to find out, like, what's the level of excitement in on trade. Are customers are they excited to take the product? What's the level of engagement that you're getting back? And so these are all the sort of actually, I think in reality our execution was terrible. The only thing I used to measure yeses, which was like, if someone in a buying meeting would say, yeah, we'd love to take the product, just put a tick next to it and move on to the next thing. And I suspect that we didn't pick up all of the listings that we thought we had, because I was just moving on too quickly on to the next thing. We've got much better than that now.
A bit more process.
A bit more process in there. And we didn't. So coming back to your earlier question, we didn't think about the off trade. I wasn't going to think about the off trade at all for like 18 months or 2 years, and then I met Shalen, who's now our chairman, and he was running a thing called Distill Ventures at the time, and we talked about off trade, and he said, actually, the thing you really need to think about is off trade, like, now, because non-alc drinks brands are being built as much in the off trade, so in supermarkets, as they are in the on trade, because it's easier to convince someone to drink an alcohol-free beer at home on a Monday than it is in a bar on a Friday. And so we ended up, all the intentions to just do on trade, and actually we sort of spoke to Sainsbury's the next day.
Wow.
And actually, I've just been there this afternoon, literally in the same room where I had the first meeting on like the 20th of December, 2018. And so they became our first retail partner in early 2019.
As my next question was there a partner that sort of like put you on the map in those early days? So I'm assuming it was Sainsbury's for you back then.
Yeah, like the big ones were definitely, so Sainsbury's. Yeah, we were part of what's called Future Brands program, which is a thing, because retail's like really intimidating when you're a small brand and B have never done it, and all of those things. So Future Brands, I always thought of it as a bit of a sort of, it softens the blow and kind of gives you a bit of protection against or a bit of comfort and support. So a bit of cushion to kind of work in that environment while you warm up to it. So that was great. So yeah, they supported us, and still like great customer of ours, and we work really closely with them. The other one was probably our first listing, which was Honest Burgers, and is still again, like that was a very serendipitous meeting, because I was in pre-launch, was trying to hire a salesperson, and met an amazing recruiter who actually we met in Soho House in Dean Street, and she said, "Oh, great. Well, tell me about this role. Where's it going to be in?" And I said, "Well, it would be, number one place I'd love to be would be, the Soho House. We're sitting in one." And then the next thing I said was, well, if there was a burger joint, it would be Honest Burgers, because of what they stand for in terms of quality. They still hand cut their chips and all this amazing stuff. And she says, "Well, you're not going to believe it, but Tom, the founder, was best man at my wedding, and I'm having dinner with him tonight. Would you like an intro?" Yes. Double yes. And I met Tom the next week. We sat outside the original Honest Burgers restaurant in Brixton Market, 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a Tuesday, I still remember it. And sat there drinking like hand-labeled bottles of Lucky Saint. They were just samples, so they were just in standard bottle shapes. And he loved the beer, and said, "Yeah, great, I'll put it in all my restaurants." 28 restaurants. Wow. And next menu change is the 1st of October, so that became our launch date.
Oh wow, God! It really is all about like who you know and making sure you're chatting to someone. You never know who you're sat next to. Have the conversation.
Yeah, well, I think you just and it's these are like it's fortuitous stuff, but yeah, like just always being curious about things, I think it helps.
And was there a moment when maybe it was going into an Honest Burger, or maybe it was walking into Sainsbury's and seeing your product on shelf, or going for an Honest Burger and watching someone order it and drink it, and you're there kind of like looking? We were saying just before we came on the pod that one of you guys picked it up and Luke was having a little look to see your reaction to it. What's that kind of like, as seeing your product in the wild as such?
Yeah, it's sort of strange. I think the most impactful thing, so we launched on draft in January 2020, and I think seeing like because we all like that's the hero thing about beer, and like and so walking into a pub and seeing your branded font in there and someone ordering a pint, that was very cool. And then I've got to say, I still get a buzz when occasionally you see someone around who's wearing a pair of Lucky Saint socks. And I'm always like, yes.
Merch. Everyone loves a bit of merch. And in those, those early days, and when you got the Sainsbury's listing, did you kind of come home and sit on the sofa and go, like, this is resonating? Like, people are really understanding, like, the purpose of alcohol-free and why I've brought this product to market?
It's all, so you just immediately go, like, you get a call. I remember the call from Tom at Sainsbury's, and he was like, "Yeah, look, we tasted the product, we love it, we want to put it in." I was like, "Okay, great." And then you have to wait 3 months, because that's how long it takes to sort of get these things on shelf. But it's always like that's only the first thing. You then got to find out if it's going to sell, and that so there's all these steps, and I'm not very good at like sort of not very good at sort of sitting back and going, oh, isn't that brilliant? I'm sort of always wondering like what's the next thing, and like what comes next. And
it's hard, I think, to like take the success in. I think when something happens, you need to kind of say to your team, "Come on, we're going for a beer," like you say.
Yeah, we do, and we've got much better at celebrating successes, for sure. Because it's important. We've got an amazing team, and it's celebrating and like recognizing the things that are happening is really important. Emma, who's our MD, introduced this, which I just think is the most amazing saying, which is like, "These are the good old days," which is just a good reminder that these are the times we'll look back on this and you'll be like, God, do you remember when that happened? Because otherwise we'll sit in a Monday morning meeting and it'll be like this sort of incredible deluge of like new wins and listings and amazing activations, and it'll be the middle of dry January and like there'll be posters everywhere, and you got to remind like these are the good old days.
Yeah, I like that. Were there any big mistakes in the early days that you kind of look back on now and go, God, that was a real obstacle that we had to overcome?
I'm not very good at like mistakes. I don't know. I just not like I don't mean we've not made any, but I just think they're all part of that. They're just learnings for what comes next.
What was a learning then in those early days that you think we would have done that differently had we known?
From the early days, I'm trying to think of interesting things. I mean, like the way we set ourselves up, like organizationally, and like the supply chain I built first time round was like total chaos. So lots of funny things like that. We always obsess about like quality of the beer, and quality of the beer is actually it's really hard to do, and it's a series of it's getting lots of small things really right, and you don't realize that initially. You just think, if it tastes great when you brew it, then that. But if you don't package it well, then the beer won't be good. And so there've been times when the beer hasn't been as good as it should be. But the reality is that before it happened, I never realised that was something that could go wrong. So then you're like, oh, there's another thing. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I was speaking to a founder recently who canned a product, and it was fizzy when she said she put it in. And then she tested its shelf life, and like within like 2 weeks, there was no fizz. And she was like, I've just spent thousands canning all these products and they don't fizz anymore. But she wouldn't have known that unless she'd canned it. So something had obviously gone wrong. So you're right. It's what you don't know at the start. You're like, that was a learning curve. But obviously I wouldn't have known that unless I'd done it to make the mistake. The learning curve as such. And after getting into thousands and thousands of venues, COVID hit. The pandemic, the thing that we all kind of have basically forgotten about. What kind of internal or strategic shifts did you have to make to kind of pivot to react to this worldwide pandemic that we all thought was going to last 3 weeks and we had nice weather for?
So we were a business, so we were 70% on trade, so that's like bars, pubs and restaurants. Not what you'd call like brilliantly positioned for a pandemic. Or a lockdown. We also had, I remember Shalen, who's our chairman, I remember him calling me, and actually, I don't know why I remember where I was for all these things. I was just over the road, standing outside Bank Tube Station, and we'd just built this plan. So we'd launched Draft in January, and we had what we thought was 3 months stock, and it sold in 3 weeks, and we were really like riding the crest of a wave. And there'd been a bit of chat about COVID and this thing that was going on somewhere else, and then Shalen called and he was like, by the way, I think you just need to like run the numbers on if this is real. And the scenario was 12 weeks, which turns out was like exactly the right one. That was the first lockdown. 12 weeks of no revenue and no cash receipts, because people actually by then they'd already stopped paying us, so everyone started holding cash back from the end of February, so like 3 weeks before lockdown happened. And we ran that and was like, ooh, we're out of money in 3 weeks. So not great timing, but it sort of it was what it was. We were fortunate in that we had these 100 Sainsbury's stores, so that was like great. And then also at the back end of 2019, we'd started testing D2C as a channel. So it had this vague idea about trying to build a sort of marketing flywheel where you could use Meta and Facebook ads to acquire customers while also driving awareness more broadly for the brand.
And D2C is direct to consumer, just in case anyone. So like via a website or...
So through the website and through Amazon. So it had this idea about trying to build that marketing flywheel, but couldn't make it work. But we were fortunate because all the sort of infrastructure was set up. So we had Amazon, we had a Shopify website, and we were all set up on the like digital advertising platforms. And then I remember it was the day before the first lockdown was announced, literally out of nowhere, our sales on Amazon grew by 20-fold, just out of nowhere.
Everyone was stockpiling, weren't they?
Well, so this is exactly it. It was like, I was like, well, that'll last for a day. Like if they've got their Lucky Saint and their loo paper, then they'll be fine. So that I thought that was going to be a one-off, and then it was the next day, and then the next day, and then a week later, our website literally did exactly the same thing. It like grew by 20-fold in a day, and it never stopped. And so we ended up being bigger. 2 weeks by, so April 2020, we were actually bigger as a business than we had been in January 2020.
Definitely didn't run out of money.
Having lost 70% of our business, and then it came back. Yeah, we had our problem quickly became running out of stock because we'd stopped ordering because we were like, well, this is the world's shutting down for the next 3 months. So then we were going and we was like begging and borrowing and stealing, trying to get like beer back off customers. So we'd go around and we'd like pick up half a pallet of beer and like, can we have that back so we can sell it?
Oh, really? What, your customers that had stock sitting in warehouses?
So we'd have wholesalers who had just got stock sitting there and doing nothing, and they weren't paying us. So we're like, well, we'll come pick that up. We'll have that back, and then we're going to sell it to someone else. Yeah. So it was a very sort of strange year because in total, funnily enough, we ended up sort of doing the plan that we thought we'd do in 2020, just not in the way that we thought we would. So we ended up with an amazing D2C channel, and then we won a bunch of more supermarkets, and then the on-trade came back, and it feels like quite a long time ago now.
It was like 5 years now. It's kind of mental. That time of lockdown, did it give you a really like a chance to really focus in on where you maybe had inefficiencies? Because obviously it was a lot of time at home, and there was no going to the pub, there was no social plans, so it really gave you like focus time. Did you think anything came out of that you thought, if I hadn't had that time, I actually wouldn't be the business, or this wouldn't have happened in the way it happened?
I think there's lots of stuff around team that we sort of learnt, and the importance of, I think again, like we were morning and evening all team calls, like beginning and end of day every day initially, and then everyone worked.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. We did.
It was that like sort of, and then you go to once a day, and then it was like 3 times a week, and then once a week, and then everyone, and you sort of you get back to normal. But I think within that, just the importance of like team and culture and kind of like supporting one another, that definitely came through. And you just work work really hard and like figured a load of stuff out, and as I say, we got a D2C channel out of it it's still growing today and still doing brilliantly, and we also we spent quite a lot of effort on just supporting customers in the way. So like all of our hospitality customers were shut, but we we worked with them in sort of any way that we could and supported them, so try to sort of try to be good people along the way. There was an amazing. I remember really. I can't remember where it came from, but I remember reading really early on, and it stuck with me. It still stuck with me. Is that the decisions you make in COVID, or I think it applies to any sort of situation like that. The decisions you make won't be judged in a week's time or 3 weeks' time. They'll be judged with hindsight and 20/20 vision looking back. So you should always think about that, and sort of therefore like the moral compass that you put against the decisions you make. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I started the podcast in lockdown, and here we are at the Ned interviewing the founder of Lucky Saints.
How many episodes?
I am episode 67 now.
God,
I know. Kind of amazing, really. I've been very lucky. Right time, hey? And you describe a phase of shoe leather selling. What's one pitch or customer kind of interaction that you had where you thought this is going to shape Lucky Saints' evolution, that you came out of it? I mean, you've spoken about Sainsbury's, but was there another one where you kind of thought, and it might have been within the pub world, it might have been like a chain or a hotel chain, for example, that you thought, that's a lot of eyes on my product if it goes in there?
God, there are so many. I think the Honest Burgers thing, I definitely didn't recognize it at the time. It turns out that like it's not that easy all of the time. I think it was January. When did we officially launch in Soho House? It was probably like January 21, I think.
They're a tough cookie to crack, Soho House.
They're a very tough cookie to crack. Like amazing, just one of the most iconic hospitality groups in the world, and one that we'd been knocking on the door of politely for quite a long time. So the beginning of that was like an amazingly rewarding win. So yeah, those would probably be. I think the other thing, just that like shoe leather selling, and it's a really important phase, I think, particularly for like a founder, because you see it's very visceral, because you hear and see all of the feedback like live, and so you learn a lot in that. And more often than not, like they'd be like, oh yeah, cool, and then they'd just do a live tasting in front of you, and they'd pull whatever they've got in the fridge, they'd put it out, and they'd taste it side by side, and then you just have to sort of sit there, and it's just terrifying watching someone basically like just try your product, and you just sort of be like, cross your fingers. But yeah, you just learn so much doing that.
And British Beer and Pub Association welcomed you as its first alcohol-free member, which I'm assuming to lots of people on the board thought it might something they'd never ever see. What was that meeting like, and kind of getting that plaque after? So
funny enough, I think they had a special meeting to decide whether they should let in an alcohol-free brand, which is pretty cool. Cool because they said yes. We've done a few things in the industry, and I often look at craft beers and think about it was almost built in opposition to a category. So it was quite kind of the category was built like kind of quite a confrontational way, and I know that never sat very naturally with me, and we've always just thought it's much better to try and influence an industry in a positive way, but let's do it from within and by working with people, rather than sort of trying to go kind of head to head. So therefore we've tried to do things like the BBPA and other like trade associations and organizations, and be part of try and be part of the solution rather than like sort of rallying against things.
And did it cause any like friction? Did you get any kind of like funny feedback or anything? You were like, I wasn't expecting that.
When we became a member there, no, not really. And we've been really lucky because the industry have also been very kind of welcoming to us, and they see the role of alcohol free, and the positive role it's having on not just on the industry but on broader health of the nation. And so no, we're the industry is very much like behind the category, so that's been good.
Yeah, definitely. You need the support of them, for sure, to kind of make sure that your brand is seen out there as well. And your investors now today include seniors from Diageo's, Distill Ventures, Innocent Founders, Warburtons. Which investors' insight did surprise you when you heard them say it, if there was at all one? And which one have you kind of that's really been like in on the journey with you?
So Jonathan Warburton is great, and he always his obsession is all about quality, and it's the thing he always wants to talk about. And he's like, if you've got product and product quality at the center of everything that you're doing, then you're on a good foundation. So that's, I think, just it's a good compass to keep coming back to. And then Richard Reed, who's one of the Innocent founders, gave me, I think, just the best piece of advice I've ever had as a founder, which is, as a founder, you should only do the things that only you can do. And it was so liberating, because it was basically permission not to struggle with like all of the things that I don't add any value doing, and just and it's like permission to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this and that, because that's where I can add value. And it applies I think it applies all the way through the journey, from day one, when I probably as a founder probably shouldn't be spending all of their time solving like operational and logistical things, because there's probably someone who can not only do it but probably undoubtedly do it better. But all the way through to today, I'm still thinking like, where should I spend my time? Because I could easily spend my time on like a million things, but I should try and spend it on the things that are going to make the biggest difference.
I love that piece of advice. And another one that I heard from speaking to lots of founders on the podcast, they always say, always hire better than you. There's no point hiring someone that can do what you do, or a worse job, for example. So get expertise in that you can't do.
Yeah. Better and different.
Better and different, for sure, because you need like the yin to your yang as well.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't.
And the competition now, and kind of the industry and the landscape, obviously so many brands have entered since Lucky Saint's arrival into the market, but also, you've got gin, non-alcoholic now, you've got lots of non and low, even there's low alcohol now. What do you see as the next generation of disruptors in the industry?
Within non-alc?
Yeah.
There's so much going on, and yet I still feel like the category's right at the beginning of its journey. So I remember figuring out in 2016 that in this country 0.5% of beer sales are alcohol free. So that's 1 in every 200 beers sold is alcohol free. We're now up to like 2% or 2.5%. So the category's grown by 5-fold, which is fantastic, but it's still only 2.5% of total beer. And we have to keep reminding ourselves of that actually there's so much there's so much still to go after, and the level of acceptance and change that's happened in the category. I was thinking back again, because I've been in Sainsbury's today. I was remembering we used to do like samplings at the front of store in 2019. I remember going down to Haywards Heath, which is a great stomping ground for Lucky Saints. But honestly, the feedback you'd get at the front of a store as you try to convince someone to try an alcohol-free beer in 2019. So, the world has changed so much since then, and the acceptance of the category has been has been amazing. But we're still, other countries have 10% of beer sales. So I still feel like, there's still just an enormous job to do, and the biggest unlock I think for us in this country is about is draft. So we as a nation always think like the pint is like one of our biggest institutions or most important institutions, and until you can drink a beer regardless of its ABV, or you can drink an alcohol-free beer in the same format that you'd expect to drink a full-strength beer, then it doesn't become totally normalised. So that's, I think, the big thing. And there's only 2% of venues in this country, of pubs in this country, have an alcohol-free beer on draft. So again,
still in its infancy.
Yeah.
And zebra striping is a trend that like I'm seeing a lot. And actually, I think I was doing it before it was nicknamed this. I'm not a massive drinker, and I'll have maybe like a glass of wine and then like a glass of water, or a glass of wine, or have like some soda water. And my friends probably think it's a gin, but I don't need to tell them that. And that kind of zebra striping trend is also because I think people are definitely drinking less. And is that something that you see as well? Because you obviously have your amazing pub, which you opened in 2023 in Marylebone.
Yep.
Yeah. And kind of, have you seen that trend in your pub? And obviously having a pub, there's a lot of questions here. Sorry, I'm realising as I'm reading them off. Having a pub is such an amazing touch point for you and your customer, because you literally can go downstairs and go, right, I need one of you, pull you for a chat. I need to ask some questions. Like, how does, the kind of pub work as well?
So zebra striping, which for those not, is alternating between alcoholic and a non-alcoholic drink. This came out of some research that we did with CAM, which is a research agency. And so we do a no and low report with them every year, and this came out last year. But you're absolutely right. I think the what's happened is that people have been alternating, a soft drink and an alcoholic drink for years and years and years, but haven't been doing it consciously. But when we realised it was happening, we sort of put a bit of a brand on it, and then you play it back to a consumer, and people go, oh yeah, that's what I do, and now it's become part of the vernacular. That sort of, so it helps when the easiest thing to do is actually to find something that people are already doing, and then sort of play it back to them, tell them, and then they go, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing, and then it becomes even more of a thing. So I can't remember why you were asking about zebra striping, but that's what I think about that.
No, I was just saying how like that trend that you said is you kind of brought out, but actually you're right, people were doing it before it was a thing, and then obviously you opened up your non-alcohol, or the kind of Lucky Saint pub, obviously in Marylebone. Did you design that space as a bit of an R&D hub? Because I know that your office is above it, and kind of like talk to me about having like a pub as an alcohol-free beer brand.
So the pub was, number one objective, home for our team. Number two, amazing opportunity to kind of bring the brand to life outside of just the bottle and the packaging that you see. And then number three, like data and insight that we can get out of it, and how quickly we can see, what's happening kind of on the ground. The idea had been, we'd had the idea for a long time. We took ages trying to find a site, because we were looking for something that could do both jobs. So, an office upstairs for the team, and then a pub, and we wanted central London. And I thought, oh yeah, let's do it in Soho. And then it turns out pubs in Soho are really expensive. So we opened in 2023. Like, important things for us were, this is not a non-alcoholic pub. So it needs to be an inclusive space, whether you're drinking or not. So that was really important. And then we wanted to use it to, I guess, show how well a pub could perform with a good range and well executed non-alc. So that was always something that's really important. And then, I don't know, like selfishly, opportunity to sort of like open a pub under the auspices of a good brand home is like an opportunity that's too good to resist.
Also, it's quite fun to be able to hold like big meetings there. So like Sainsbury's, Tesco, bring them in, say come to the pub.
So it's definitely it's transformational in terms of getting, people want to come to you suddenly, which is amazing, particularly as a small brand when you You work really hard to get time with your customers. So having a space where we can bring people and welcome and host them has been invaluable. And then it's been great for our team. We had 10 offices in the space of 4 years, I think. So suddenly being in one place for 2.5 years is it's really nice.
And in using kind of the space for hosting and having your customers obviously walking through the door, is there anything that having the pub has led you to understand your customer that maybe like data or spreadsheets like couldn't?
I think the biggest thing is people just want like non-out to be normal.
Yeah.
Like you just people, generally speaking, we're human beings. We want to fit in. Largely speaking, there will be non-drinkers or people who aren't drinking on that occasion will be a minority within a group, and we all want to fit in, and so alcohol-free beer on draft, great cocktail range, just a really good great selection of drinks, knowledgeable staff. That for me is the biggest takeaway we get. I mean, we also get quite geeky about what percentage of the beer sales is Lucky Saint and all that sort of stuff. But
what percentage is it?
So we'll do 15% of the beer sales is Lucky Saint, which is a lot in the context where if the average in pubs is 1%.
Yeah.
So it massively overtrades, and it helps our name is above the door, right? It's cool. It's called the Lucky Saint. But equally, you get some people, but it's not branded inside. So you get some people walk in and they don't know the brand, and so they'll happily come in and have a pint of Timmy Taylor's, and they'll be none the wiser. And that's absolutely the way it should be. Like we don't want it's not the M&M's world of Lucky Saint.
You definitely know you're in an M&M store. You've said you want to be the alcohol-free beer what Guinness is to stout. What would a Guinness level moment look like for you? Would it be something like sponsoring a big football team or like a stadium thing? What is that moment for you?
So I grew up in a family full of people who all worked in advertising. So my mum was in advertising, my dad, my sister, and it would not be unusual to sit down on a Saturday evening and just watch, top 100 TV commercials of all time on UK Gold. Does that still exist, that channel?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. No, yeah.
I've not heard of
UK Gold. So I think a defining moment would be having creatively producing the product. So I think basically I grew up in the 90s, the Levi's ads, the Guinness ads, the Stella Artois ads were just high production value, just amazing pieces of art that were then supported with colossal media budgets. And I'd wouldn't it be cool to bring that back? There's the dream.
I don't know why, but I always remember the Toblerone ad, or maybe I've seen it loads, but you don't have that what's the word I'm looking for, resignation with those ads anymore that you used to. I remember them as a kid. You'd see it and you'd remember and you remember. We don't watch that much TV or live TV anymore. No,
I think someone who's really smart rationalised to me why that might not ever be the case again, which is a bit depressing, but anyway, I'm still going to dream about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions and then it's over to the audience. So have a think about what you might want to ask Luke. I've got a couple of good ones. Which one should I end on? I'll go for a bit of a founder reflection as well. So you've pivoted roles. Obviously, you've hired the amazing your MD, Emma Hill, who I see and hear a lot about on LinkedIn. She's an amazing character to learn from. Early on, what would your career path have looked like if you hadn't thought of Lucky Saint?
So I mentioned earlier that I'd had this kind of meeting with two founders of a technology business, and it kind of opened my eyes to the space. And my original idea was I should go and get a job in a startup, and then I started meeting founders of startups, and none of them seemed very keen to hire me. I think basically I didn't have any. You hire like very specific, like you always have a really specific need when you're hiring in a startup. I now know this, and I had zero like subject matter expertise on anything, so I was unhireable. So maybe I'd still be sort of like scratching around trying to convince someone to hire me. But yeah, it wouldn't. There's something amazing about starting your own business, which is it's completely all encompassing. Which is sort of amazing and overwhelming, kind of all at the same time, all of the time. But it's great, and I feel very fortunate that the wind has been in our sails for most of it, and so.
And definitely on the up, as we see so many more brands, as we say. And if you could whisper one hard truth to yourself before the 1st of October 2018, what would you have said? It's a big question.
Yeah. Oh God, I feel like I've got to come back to that one.
Okay, we can come back to that one. Proudest win that nobody knows about, that was like a really personal win for you, but didn't maybe mean anything to kind of like your consumers or the team, but was a really like for one for you that really hit home.
I'm not going to say who it was, but someone who I respect massively from the kind of advertising and brand and marketing world. And I was asking for advice on, creative decisions and like what are the things that we should do next, and his response was like, and we were looking for copy lines and I was just sort of thinking in search of the next thing, and he was just like it's brilliant, just do that again, and so that was nice to hear. Anyway, I've taken him up on that, and we're quite good at the consistency thing now.
And finish my sentence. The future of alcohol-free will be.
Rosie.
Okay, I like that one. And should we come back to that question?
Hard trick. I think, you know what, I'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
This
is going to be hard, but enjoy it.
I think so. Like it is, as I've said, like it's a like all-encompassing. It throws everything at you. It's sort of invariably going to sort of dominate life and life at home and life like it all merges into one. But do enjoy it. Like it's brilliant things happen, and you learn loads, and it's like incredibly rewarding. So yeah, don't forget to enjoy it.
I think as well, I was speaking on a panel earlier with a lot of entrepreneurs. I called on there was a few of them, and they were saying how those moments that you maybe fuck up on, look back and you have to sort of laugh about it. At the time, it felt like the end of the world, but you have to learn to kind of have a giggle and go, okay, that wasn't actually that bad. Like, we did get through it. It really hurt, and it was an emotional period, etc. But you've got to have that kind of perspective of things as well. Yeah,
we quite quickly figured out, you're like, oh, that's a disaster. It says everything that I now can't remember what that thing was. Yeah. The first time that happened, you sort of have to say to yourself, like, basically you have to say at the time, is this going to be are we going to remember this in even 2 years' time, let alone 5 years' time? And the reality is, most of the things that go wrong and most of the challenges that you have are they're dots on a journey. Yeah,
dots on the journey to the amazing alcohol-free world that you work in. Thank you so much, Luke, for sharing your journey here with us this evening. Can I get a round of applause again?
Thanks, Zoe.
And make sure you all enjoy your lucky saint this evening. So, some questions from the audience. Who would like to go first? This gentleman right here to my left in the shirt. Sorry, I can't see anything in here. I would give it. Do they stretch? Oh yeah, they do.
Hi Luke, thank you for that. Thank you, Zoe. Firstly, I'm a founder of a branding performance agency in London, so if you do want to make a deal on an ad campaign, you can do that. Just listening to you talk here, I had a situation at the weekend with a friend of mine who has struggled with alcoholism, and he was saying that Lucky Saint changed his life in the sense that when he was trying to stop drinking 9 months ago, he locked himself away. But now he can go out and have a drink, and people can't just, oh, go on, have a drink, and that horrible moment. And you mentioned being inclusive.
Yeah.
So observation, thank you.
Thank you.
More importantly, I think, have you lent into any of the communication around that and the positive impact? Because I've seen lots of the positive press that you have, and we talk around the way that alcoholism has changed society in that sense, but just specifically around alcoholism and the impact that you've had. Have you thought much about that?
So, yeah, we've not leaned into the comms around it. There are, if you read through, there's some amazing stories that come through. Some of them come in sort of directly via email. Some are on Trustpilot about the positive impact that we can have. There is, with alcoholism specifically, alcohol-free beer doesn't work for everyone who's in recovery. So it's a space one we sort of need to be respectful of, and for some people it's an amazing solution like the one you've described. For some people, just the taste of it can be triggering. So I'd say it's an area we like to take, I guess, great pride in, having had a positive impact, but equally, but at the same time, for that reason, not going out sort of hard with it from a sort of with a comms perspective, and there's probably there's lots of there's a lens from a marketing perspective that I think applies not just to that, but lots of there are alcohol-free beer sort of need states or occasions that we also don't go after, because we don't go after you're driving, have a lucky saint. So there are there are some things you go after and some you don't. Nice.
Who would like to go next? Yes, that gentleman over there.
So first of all, thank you very much. It was very, very interesting. So you have gone for a partnership for your production. Can you elaborate a little bit on how that was, and if sometimes you have regretted kind of not doing it, or doing it yourself, or not doing it yourself, but having a partner? I think for many young food and beverage brands, it's a big question: do we use co-packers, production partners, or do we invest in big production lines?
So quick question about outsourced production versus building your own brewery.
Yeah.
Right. Breweries are funny things. They work best when they're at capacity, and when you're trying to double your business every year, sort of by definition, you're either sort of like under capacity or over capacity. So that was one consideration for us. The second was the equipment you need to brew alcohol-free beer is incredibly expensive. So therefore, being able to invest in it at that stage wasn't feasible. The most important thing, so that was sort of, that drove the decision making. The most important part is, how do you get really good quality out of a brewery that's not your own. And we brew in Germany. It was a brewery I approached in 2017, and it's a 400 and something year old brewery in Bavaria. It's family owned, independent, and they're not a contract brewer. And I managed to build a relationship with them and convince them that they should help with development of the product, but then they've gone on, and we still brew there today. So so there's some considerations around like how practical is it to kind of to build your own production, particularly in those very early stages, and then just the importance of like working with the right partner. That's for me, like that's it's paramount in terms of like consistently doing a great job with quality.
We have time for 2 more questions. There's a man right at the back I can see with his hand up. All the men are asking questions because it's beer. I've decided that. Get a girl involved.
So 2 questions, one for fun but one for serious. What's the one thing that the consumer in mind would you change about the beer industry?
The one thing I'd change... Sorry, say it again.
I think that for me the beer industry feels very old school and very sort of big business organised. What's the one thing you would change, thinking for the benefit of the consumer?
Oh gosh.
Another big question.
Just like...
And the reason I ask that, if this buys you time, is just look at the fixture and it feels it's very hard to shop. It's very dominated by brands who spend the money, and I was just curious, what would you do for the consumer to make it better?
Look, I think my frustration as a consumer would be that what you get in a pub is, when you walk into a pub and you look at what's on the bar, it's just you see a lot of the same things everywhere you go. And I don't mean that one brand is very successful. I'm fully supportive of a brand being very successful. More that the offering that you get seems to be the same. So you just have multiple products that are sort of doing the same thing. And I'd love to see a sort of more variety from that perspective.
Thanks, good answer. And then the fun question is, what would you say to the people that invented Caliber?
The thing is, I don't think I've ever tried it, and I remember the Billy Connolly adverts, but I don't think I've never tried it. But like all these things, it's a journey of improvement, right? We've gone Caliber, we've had Beck's Blue, we've had Beck's Blue was like utterly transformational when it launched 20 years ago. It was it totally reset the standard. And then I remember in 2017, I think it was 2017, Heineken Zero launched, and again it just it moved the game on. And we were in development at that point, and I distinctly remember seeing the article come out and just being, oh well, that was a good idea while it lasted. It's all over now.
Yeah, that could be an exit.
So that and then we've obviously tried to move the game on again, and we'll continue to work on how do we make the product and the category better and better. Always think if you're not, it's one of those things you have to be moving forward almost just to stand still. If you're standing still, then you're definitely going backwards.
And one more question.
All right, so you have a question from a female now. So
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for this. This was very interesting.
I was very interested to just hear from you in terms of the geographical split of your sales, right? In the UK, where you see a large proportion of them coming from. And I know you mentioned you have a brewer in Germany that you work with, so even internationally. And then also just probably following up on one final point, what would be your ideal exit strategy?
So we're 100% UK and Ireland. We started in London, literally started right in the middle of London and have worked our way out. So we're more biased towards London than the southeast than we are nationally, but we're distributed everywhere. But yeah, we do proportionally we over-index in London and the southeast for sure. Driven by the fact that we started here, so that's kind of where our distribution has kind of grown out from. But also the non-out category is more advanced in London and the southeast than it is in the other parts of the UK. We brew in Germany. We don't sell our beer in Germany, which is always interesting. Whenever I meet any brewer in Germany, I always say, should we be launching here? And they unanimously all say no, don't do it. The market's a total disaster. So I'm going to keep asking. Maybe one day someone. And then exit strategy, just not something that sort of exists within our thinking. So I don't believe that we'll build the best brand or the best culture or seize our opportunity and do it justice if we're thinking about or building for someone else. So we have to do this and we have to build for all of the right reasons and make all of our decisions based on the fact that we're building a brand that's going to be here for 20, 50, 100, 200 years. And the rest will take care of itself.
Thank you so much again, Luke, for your insight into Lucky Saint. I hope all of you will enjoy one this evening. Please do take some pics and post on Instagram or wherever you guys post, LinkedIn, etc. It really helps support Getting to Grow. And please do follow me as well and make sure to subscribe. It's available where you listen to all of your podcasts. So yeah, do search for it and have a listen on your next commute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe.